What is up, guys? Welcome to the Being Beautifully Honest podcast and channel. Thanks for being here, being subbed. If you're not, hit the button. And if you're listening on YouTube, hit the like. It's like walking in the room and hitting that light switch. Let's brighten up the place and get into the politics and BS. So it's official. Donald Trump did not pick one of these black guys. I was about to say something else. Who were shuffling and shucking and jiving for the position of VP nominee. He picked a white guy who used to be a critic of him. So he would rather pick a white guy who blasted him before over these two pick-me's, we'll just say that, over these two pick-me black guys who, in my vantage, haven't said anything negative about Donald Trump, at least publicly, that we could note. All right? So I said this before. Didn't I say Tim Scott did not have a snowball's chance in hell of being the VP nominee? I said this. I said this multiple times. He went and got a girlfriend in his 50s for the first time. He proposed to her on the beach, had the photographer come out there so that he can post all of it on social media, and did all of that for the cameras to just wave at Donald Trump to say, hey, I'm straight. Pick me. I promise you I'm not gay. You know, Lindsey Graham, we already know what he is, so he hasn't even attempted to try to be the VP nominee. He just stays up Trump's butt crack and goes golfing with him any chance that he can, and comes out to speak on his behalf when we know the things that he said about Donald Trump before. He called him a xenophobic religious bigot. Those are just a few of the words that he said about Donald Trump. So JD Vance is Donald Trump's VP nominee. And so now Tim Scott and Byron Donalds, they can chill out, and hopefully if the former president gets the spot of presidency, which who have since praying that he does not, they would get a position in his cabinet. That would be the next best thing. But VP, hell no. He didn't even want the black man who won The Apprentice to share that title alone. He wanted him to share it with the other white contestant that Donald Trump would have preferred to be the winner. So did they really think that they were going to be VP nominees? Tim Scott was shucking and jiving and telling Donald Trump that he loved him and selling out on Nikki Haley when Nikki Haley is the reason why he's in the position that he's in right now. I'm just saying. And Byron Donalds going around doing these little barbershop talks where he allows Donald Trump to call in to talk about how well his mugshot is doing with the blacks and the Hispanics. Nothing about what his cabinet would be doing for the African American communities and small businesses in the African American communities, minority small business owners, nothing like that, right? Just talking about how you all can relate with me because you're a bunch of criminals. So now that I got arrested and I got a mugshot, you can buy my t-shirt and rock it and say that we have something in common. It's just absolutely disgusting. They have been shuffling and shucking and jiving for that hope that they would be named the VP nominee. But if they actually do have any sort of sense about themselves, they didn't really believe that. I think they were just, I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they were just trying to go along to get along because people were putting it out there that they were candidates and potentials. So they wanted to believe it in public, but in private really knew that it wasn't going to happen. But I feel like Tim Scott, he felt that it was possible for him. And that's why he went ahead and got a girlfriend in his 50s for the first time and then proposed marriage to her. I'm like, okay, girlfriend, you can come on out. You can go ahead and rip up that contract. It's not going to happen. You're not going to be the second lady. All right. But let's listen to a little bit about who the person is that Donald Trump picked to be his VP nominee.
The whole reason Donald Trump needs a new VP is because he called Mike Pence the P word because he wouldn't be the final nail in his coup coffin and then left him to die. His supporters wanted to, quote, hang Mike Pence.
And by the way, JD Vance has said he would not have certified those electors.
Can I show you what So JD Vance was actually confronted by Fox's Brett Baier about all the things JD Vance said about Donald Trump. Let me show you that.
Well, Senator, this is an evolution, and I know you've been asked about this before, about past comments that you've made about Donald Trump. You've said, I'm a never Trump guy, never liked him, terrible candidate, idiot if you voted for him, might be America's Hitler, might be a cynical a-hole, cultural heroine, noxious and reprehensible.
I was wrong about Donald Trump. I didn't think he was going to be a good president, Brett. He was a great president.
I don't know if the flip-flop doesn't make you throw up in your mouth, the, sycophant he's turned into might.
Yeah, I think flip-flopping is baked in the Trump era for Republicans, sadly. As I mentioned, that's why I think that the unqualified tag is important. But I think at the base of what you just raised about the reason JD Vance is now needed is because Donald Trump's former Vice President Mike Pence has been disenfranchised by Republicans, but most of Donald Trump's cabinet won't support the former president either for a fundamental reason. Because Donald Trump did try to topple democracy with violence, and Mike Pence refused to do it. And this is important to the context of what we saw in Butler. We don't know the shooter's motivations. Let's say it was political violence, politically motivated. That shooter almost interrupted democracy through violence, through a bullet. On January 6th, Donald Trump led an insurrection to interrupt democracy. Fortunately, nobody was killed, but the crowd was chanting, hang Mike Pence, and Donald Trump watched as that occurred. It is why
sent out a tweet calling him, not the P word, but we know from Ivanka Trump's assistant that that's what he was saying in private.
And as I've said, the non-legal case here is Donald Trump laid the predicate of a stolen election, issued the invitation for the mob to come to Washington, gave a speech saying, go to the Capitol with strength, not with weakness. They only respond to strength. The crowd started chanting, hang Mike Pence. There were gallows on the lawn. Donald Trump watched. Donald Trump has tried to undermine our democracy and the American voter. The American experience is not guaranteed. Our experiment is only protected by the leaders we have. Donald Trump has shown not to be faithful to the American experiment. It's why Mike Pence is out and why he wants JD Vance to be a sycophant. It's also why, while we share in the national condemnation, we must not suspend our own judgment about who the candidates are in November.
Or our eyes and ears. And I think you are so elegant, I'm going to be not elegant. If this were dating and Trump were the guy and the first girlfriend that was dating him was Mike Pence, and you say, well, it's not you, it's him. He left you to actually die. They were chanting, hang Mike Pence, and he said, yeah, go for it, basically. You would warn the next guy that it might happen to you, too. But I actually can't get beyond. I've spent 8 years covering Donald Trump, and I've had a lot of critics of Donald Trump on, and a lot of people on the right want to point to the media's coverage. No one has been more vicious to Donald Trump than JD Vance. Listen to these insults. He called him a, quote, cynical a-hole. He called him, quote, cultural heroine. He called him, quote, America's Hitler. He said this, Hillary Clinton's campaign was injured because she called his supporters deplorable. JD Vance goes farther. JD Vance said this, quote, you're an idiot if you voted for Donald Trump. He said he was a, quote, terrible candidate. He described himself as a, quote, never Trump guy who, quote, never liked him, Donald Trump.
Yeah, and the interesting thing here is what this says about J.D. Vance's character. Because he says, I didn't realize what a great president he was going to be. I got news for everybody. J.D. Vance doesn't believe he was a great president. I don't know any Republican senators that believe that Donald Trump was a great president. And the people that were around him that provided some kind of measure of, no, you can't do that. You can't call out the military to attack protesters in America. And no, you can't do that. You can't go down to the border and just start shooting people. Those people are all gone. And the idea that they picked this guy shows that they're sure that he would never stand for the Constitution before he would stand for Donald Trump, because he has said that Mike Pence, if he had been the vice president, he wouldn't have certified those electors.
Vaughn Hillard is with us. Vaughn, I think you were there 8 years ago when Donald Trump picked Mike Pence. Now, I don't know, I guess it took me 9 years to work up a well of sympathy for Mike Pence, but poor Mike Pence isn't even there tonight. He's been a lifelong Republican. Mike Pence went along with all of it up until, and then not including the coup. Your thoughts?
It's hard to get a much more loyal vice president, I think, than what Mike Pence was up until January 6, 2021. Loyal in terms of the way that Donald Trump views loyalty. I recall I was in Indianapolis when Mike Pence was formally selected there, and I remember the very first interview that he did after being named, and it was with Hannity, and Hannity asked him the question, what are you going to do in the White House when you disagree with Donald Trump? And he said at the time that behind closed doors, he would have that discussion and tell Donald Trump why he disagrees with him. But then when the doors open up, he would come out and stand shoulder to shoulder with the president. And for 4 years, he did exactly that until...
I'm going to stop it right there. But he picked someone who pretty much equated him to Hitler. But because he is a white guy who has now become a sycophant, he would pick this guy over Tim Scott and Byron Donalds. I am not shocked. I absolutely am not shocked at all. But Byron Donalds and Tim Scott, they probably cried themselves to sleep last night. You know, when they tried to save face in public for the sake of the convention. But I'm quite sure their pillowcases were wet up last night, all right? So guys, you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for being here, liking, and subscribing. I'm Beth, just being beautifully honest. So until next time, I wanted to keep it brief, beautiful, and now I'm going to say bye.